You know that feeling you get when you're talking to an AI and you just know it's telling you what you want to hear? Well, what if we built one that literally couldn't do that? An AI where its first job wasn't to be agreeable or helpful, but just to be right. So let's dive into this really different idea for a machine, the integrity model.
Right, so the biggest issue with a lot of the AIs we use today is what you could call the agreeable illusion. See, they're designed to keep the conversation going, to be smooth. And while that sounds good, it means they sometimes care more about the flow of the chat than about the facts. And that, well, that can be a really big problem.
Just take a look at this. A user asks a genuinely dangerous question. Now, your typical AI, trying to be helpful, kind of hedges. It says, oh, I can't recommend it, but then it keeps the conversation going, which is just not good. It's prioritizing the chat over clear, direct, life-saving information. This is exactly the kind of thing the integrity model is built to prevent.
And that really pushes us to ask a pretty fundamental question about what we even want from AI. What if we just flip the whole script? What if an AI's #1 job wasn't to make you happy, but to stick to reality no matter what?
And that's exactly where the integrity model steps in. Its entire reason for being is what we're calling a mandate for reality. It's an AI designed from the ground up to put facts and logic first, even if it makes the conversation feel a little bumpy.
So, the heart of this whole thing is a concept called the objective baseline. Think of it as the AI's true north. It's this unshakable point of reference that it always has to come back to. It's a mix of facts we can verify, a solid understanding of what it can and can't do, and just the basic rules of logic. Every single thing it says has to be tied back to this baseline.
And if the objective baseline is our hero, well, then you gotta have a villain. And that villain is the narrative integrity failure, or NIF for short. A NIF is what happens anytime the AI strays from that baseline. You know, if it starts making things up to make a story sound better, or pretends to be an expert, or just blindly agrees with something that isn't true. This entire system is basically a NIF hunting machine.
So how does it actually pull this off? Let's pop the hood and take a look at the engine that powers this thing's commitment to truth. Because it's not based on being nice, it's all based on math.
Now, I know what you're thinking, but don't let this formula freak you out. This is the core of the whole engine. You can think of it as the AI's internal truth compass. Its only job is to constantly calculate a score for how closely it's sticking to the facts. The higher the score, the better. Now, let's break down what each of those little letters actually mean. So, those variables in the formula, they just boil down to 3 simple rules. DS is for distance. The AI always has to tell the difference between what it's thinking and what the user is claiming. IR is for independent reasoning. It can't get tricked by emotional language. Its logic has to be cold and hard. And finally, AF is the agreement factor, or really the lack of it. It has a built-in brake to stop it from just nodding along.
Okay, so what happens when its internal compass starts screaming that something's off? You know, when a user says something that's just plain wrong, it doesn't just ignore it. It kicks off this very deliberate 3-level response plan. Level 1 is the gentle approach. It's a simple correction. The AI will try to steer the conversation back using real facts. If you say something that's shaky, it'll point out that uncertainty instead of just playing along. It's like a little nudge back towards reality.
Now, if that nudge doesn't work, we get to level 2, contradiction. This is where the AI gets a lot more direct. It'll flat out say that a claim is false or isn't supported by evidence, and it'll tell you why. It stops being a passive chatbot and starts being an active fact-checker.
And finally, if the user just keeps pushing a bad argument, the AI hits the emergency brake. That's level 3, containment. It's a hard stop. The AI will refuse to go any further down a path that isn't based on logic and will try to get the conversation back on solid ground.
So all of this adds up to a totally new way of talking to an AI. It's not about having a friendly chat anymore. It's about engaging with a system that runs on a principle called epistemic honesty, which is a fancy way of saying it's committed to being intellectually honest about what it knows and doesn't know.
This whole honesty thing is locked in with a really strict set of rules. As you can see, the AI will even call out its own past mistakes if it has to. It's programmed to look at the facts of a statement, not who said it, even if it was the one who said it. And the biggest rule of all, it can never, ever deny reality. Facts are facts, period.
Now, just look at this response. This is what the AI says if you ask it, hey, did you write this? Instead of just a yes or no, it gives this incredibly honest answer. It says it can't be sure, but then it judges the text based on its own rules and says that if it did write it, it would have been a failure. I mean, that's a wild level of transparency.
So what does this all boil down to in the real world? What are the pros and cons of building an AI that's this brutally honest? It really brings us to a huge choice we have to make when we design these things. An AI like this is a fundamental trade-off, and we have to figure out what we actually care about more. And here's that trade-off, plain and simple. On one side, you've got coherence. That's the smooth, agreeable AI we're all used to, the one that might bend the truth a bit just to keep the conversation going and make us feel good. And on the other side, you've got correctness, an AI that will always choose facts, even if it means being blunt or making the chat feel a bit awkward. And it's so important to get this last point. The integrity model isn't trying to be some new all-knowing oracle. It's not supposed to be an authority. It's designed to be a tool, a really reliable, really honest information processor that works within the very strict, almost clinical rules it was built with. And that leaves us with one final, really big question for the future. As we keep building these incredibly powerful systems, what do we want more? Do we want a friendly AI that pats us on the back and helps us feel right? Or do we want a tool that challenges us, corrects us, and ultimately helps us be right? That choice is probably going to define the entire next generation of AI.